I never thought my life would be consumed by someone like Damien, my CEO, calm, commanding, and dangerously obsessive. At first, it was just tension, fleeting glances, subtle touches I could almost ignore. But soon, he broke every boundary between us. I tried to resist, tried to stay professional, but I couldn't. Every word, every look, every possessive gesture drew me in. And now, I am his, completely, body, heart, and soul. This is my story, my surrender, my obsession. Damien Blackwood rarely noticed anyone. He didn't have time for distractions, unnecessary pleasantries, or the petty ambitions of employees who bowed and scraped for approval. His office, perched at the top of Blackwood Tower, was a fortress of glass and steel, reflecting the city lights like a mirror of his own cold precision. And yet, the moment Adrian Cross walked into his life, something inside Damien stirred, something he hadn't felt in years, if ever. Adrian was new, a junior executive, fresh from an impressive resume and glowing recommendations. But it wasn't his credentials that drew Damien's attention. It was his presence. The way he moved through the lobby with calm assurance, neither seeking recognition nor shying away from it. Each step, each subtle tilt of his head, carried confidence that irritated and intrigued Damien in equal measure. "First day at Blackwood Corp?" the secretary asked, barely looking up from her desk. "Yes," Adrian replied smoothly, his voice calm yet deliberate. "Reporting to Mr. Blackwood." At the mention of his name, Damien's gaze sharpened, narrowing from the comfort of his office high above the lobby. Something about Adrian's tone, steady, unflinching, yet faintly playful, made Damien uneasy in a way he didn't like admitting. Normally, newcomers cowered, stumbled over words, or made the mistake of trying too hard to impress. Adrian did none of those things. He belonged in Damien's world without asking permission. Later, during orientation, Damien watched from the glass-walled observation room as Adrian interacted with the staff. His questions were precise, thoughtful, yet carried an edge that made others shift nervously. Not arrogance, Damien noted, but clarity, honesty, and there was danger in that. Danger for someone like Damien, who had spent years controlling everything in his life, including people. By the end of the day, Adrian had done something remarkable. He had entered Damien's carefully ordered world and left a ripple. Every time Damien tried to push thoughts of him aside, Adrian returned unbidden. The curve of his jaw, the measured confidence in his step, the quiet intelligence in his eyes. Damien hated the feeling, yet he was powerless against it. As the city lights dimmed beneath him and the office emptied, Damien remained in his chair, staring down at the glowing streets below. Adrian Cross, the young executive who didn't even know him yet, had ignited something in Damien he hadn't felt before, an obsession. And Damien knew, dangerously and thrillingly, that once he acknowledged it, there would be no turning back. Adrian Cross had anticipated a lot when he joined Blackwood Corp. Long hours, high expectations, and a relentless CEO who demanded perfection. What he hadn't anticipated was the presence of Damien Blackwood. He first saw him in the boardroom, a towering figure of composure, eyes sharp as knives, scanning reports with an intensity that made the room feel smaller. Even from across the table, Damien exuded authority. Adrian felt a shiver, not of fear exactly, but of recognition. This man was danger wrapped in tailored suits. "Cross, you're on the Veil project," Damien said, voice low, measured. With just enough weight to make Adrian's pulse quicken, he didn't smile, didn't extend a hand, didn't bother with pleasantries. Every word felt like a command. "Yes, sir," Adrian replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I've reviewed the files, and I have a few suggestions for efficiency improvements." Damien arched an eyebrow. Few dared to speak with that kind of confidence on the first day. Most newcomers flinched, nodded, and quietly absorbed orders. Adrian, however, had answered like an equal, yet not disrespectfully. It was precise, deliberate, and bold. "Go on," Damien said, leaning back slightly. His piercing gaze didn't waver. Adrian outlined his plans succinctly, streamlining workflows, adjusting resource allocation, and anticipating potential conflicts. His voice was calm but compelling, the kind that made others lean in, taking notes, while Damien's sharp eyes never left him. When he finished, the room was quiet. Damien's gaze lingered on Adrian longer than he expected. He wasn't used to people who could hold their own in his presence, let alone challenge him subtly without even trying. Interesting, Damien said finally, voice controlled, yet carrying a hidden edge. I'll consider your suggestions. Adrian nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. Of course. I'm happy to help however I can. The subtle dance had begun, one of observation, assessment, and silent acknowledgement. Adrian didn't know it yet, but every word, every careful movement, had already pulled Damien deeper into obsession. Later that day, Damien found himself replaying Adrian's suggestions, his tone, the slight tilt of his head when he made a point. He caught himself imagining Adrian leaning across the table, close enough that the sharp scent of his cologne would mix with the faint warmth of his skin. Damien scolded himself internally. He didn't need distraction. He didn't need temptation. And yet, Adrian Cross, just by existing in his office, had unsettled him in ways Damien had long convinced himself were impossible. Meanwhile, Adrian left the boardroom, unaware of the storm he had stirred. He was meticulous, focused on work, unaware that his mere competence had set a powerful, controlling man on a collision course with him, a course neither of them could avoid. As night fell, Damien returned to his office, the city's glow reflecting in the glass walls. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and leaned back, thinking of Adrian, not as a colleague, but as something irresistible, dangerous, and utterly captivating. And Damien knew, in the quiet of that moment, that he would do anything to keep Adrian close. Anything. The Veil project was critical for Blackwood Corp. High stakes, tighter deadlines, and no room for mistakes. Damien, ever meticulous, insisted on direct oversight. That meant Adrian would be working in close proximity to him for the next few weeks. Adrian noticed the first signs immediately. Damien's presence was suffocating in its intensity. Every glance felt calculated. Every word measured. Yet, there was also a pull, a magnetic, almost dangerous allure that Adrian couldn't ignore. On their first day of collaboration, Damien reviewed Adrian's preliminary reports at the large oak table in his office. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Adrian sat across from Damien, carefully placing his notes in order, acutely aware of the CEO's sharp gaze. Your projections are ambitious, Damien said, voice low, precise. But you've accounted for every variable. He paused, leaning slightly forward. I'll admit, I didn't expect such competence from a newcomer. Adrian tilted his head, a subtle challenge in his eyes. I don't underestimate the company, sir, nor its leadership. Damien's chest tightened ever so slightly. That tone, the quiet confidence, the lack of deference, was irresistible. He wanted to assert control, to test boundaries, and yet he found himself fascinated, almost hungry, to see how far Adrian could push. Okay? Hours passed, with meticulous discussions, arguments over projections, and strategic adjustments. And with every exchange, Damien noticed small things, the curve of Adrian's smile when he disagreed with him, the way his fingers brushed his notes absent-mindedly, the steady rhythm of his breathing under pressure. It was maddening. Neither spoke, but the tension was palpable. Damien's jaw tightened, a growl rising somewhere deep inside him. He wanted to assert control, to mark the space as his, yet he didn't want to scare Adrian away. By late evening, they were alone in the office, the city lights casting shadows across Damien's expansive desk. Adrian's focus remained on his reports, but Damien's eyes tracked every movement. Cross, Damien said, voice low, almost dangerous. Do you realize how reckless you are? To carry yourself like this, in my office. Adrian didn't flinch. Reckless? His eyes met Damien's, unafraid. Or honest? The statement, innocent on its surface, ignited a storm inside Damien. Desire, control, and obsession collided violently. He wanted to reach out, to pull Adrian closer, yet feared the line between professional and personal had already begun to blur. That night, when Adrian left, Damien remained in his office, staring at the empty chair across from him. He replayed every glance, every word, every movement, each one a thread pulling him deeper into an obsession he could neither deny nor control. For the first time in years, Damien Blackwood was unsettled, distracted, and thoroughly captivated. And Adrian Cross had no idea of the dangerous hold he already had over the CEO. The office was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning and the distant city traffic. Night had settled over Blackwood Tower, leaving the boardroom bathed in pale lamplight. Adrian had stayed late, refining reports for the Veil project. Damien had been watching him, silent, patient, calculating. When Adrian stood to stretch, Damien's gaze followed him with an intensity that Adrian almost felt crawling along his skin. It wasn't just scrutiny, it was possession. The kind of possessiveness Damien had never allowed himself before. But now, it burned hotter than he could ignore. "Cross," Damien said, his voice low and controlled, yet with an edge that made Adrian pause mid-step. "You've been here longer than you should. Don't you have a life outside this office?" Adrian turned, meeting Damien's gaze steadily. "I have my priorities," he replied softly, unaware of the storm behind those piercing eyes. Damien's chest tightened. The casual defiance, the calm independence, it was maddening. He wanted Adrian to fear him, to obey him, yet he also wanted him to stay, closer than anyone else ever had. Without thinking, Damien rose from his chair and stepped closer. The air between them seemed to hum with tension. Adrian noticed the movement, but didn't retreat. Their eyes locked, and in that silent confrontation, the line between professional and personal blurred dangerously. "You have no idea," Damien said, his voice dropping an octave. "No idea what effect you have on me." Adrian's brow quirked, curiosity mingling with the faintest flicker of apprehension. "Affect me how?" Damien's jaw tightened, his fingers clenching at his sides. I can't explain it yet, but it's wrong. Dangerous. And he stopped, swallowing the words that threatened to expose the storm of obsession he felt. Adrian tilted his head, intrigued rather than intimidated. "Dangerous? For whom?" Damien froze. There it was, the audacity, the confidence, the subtle teasing that made Damien's pulse race. He was supposed to control everything, supposed to be untouchable. And yet here was Adrian challenging him, unafraid, untouchable in his own right. For a moment, silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Damien's restraint cracked, and he stepped closer, just a fraction too close. Adrian could feel the warmth radiating from him, smell the faint, intoxicating cologne, sense the unspoken, magnetic pull that made the hairs on his neck rise. Damien wanted to reach out, to claim, to control, but he stopped himself, the professional line still holding, however tenuously. "Go home," he said finally, voice low and brittle. Before you make this harder than it already is." Adrian nodded, a small, knowing smile tugging at his lips. "Good night, Mr. Blackwood." As Adrian walked out, Damien remained behind, staring at the empty space where Adrian had stood. Every detail of him, the calm authority, the slight defiance, the aura of danger, was etched into Damien's mind. He poured himself a whiskey, though the warmth did nothing to dull the fire in his veins. For the first time, Damien realized he didn't want Adrian to leave. He wanted to control him, possess him, and explore the dangerous fascination he felt, no matter the consequences. And deep down, he knew it wasn't just a fleeting infatuation. Adrian Cross had crossed a line into his mind, his obsession, and there was no going back. The following morning, Blackwood Tower hummed with the usual rhythm of efficiency. Employees moved like clockwork, the click of heels and the rustle of papers forming a mechanical symphony. Adrian arrived early, portfolio in hand, ready to review the latest projections before the Veil Project's weekly meeting. Damien was already there, sitting behind his massive desk, a cup of untouched coffee cooling beside him. He didn't rise when Adrian entered. He simply observed, sharp eyes tracking the subtle movements of the junior executive. Every hair out of place, every slight gesture, every micro-expression. Damien cataloged it all, committing it to memory. "Cross," Damien said, voice low but deliberate. "You're early." "I like to review reports before meetings, sir," Adrian replied calmly. "It helps me anticipate potential questions and refine recommendations." Damien's gaze lingered a fraction longer than necessary. "Anticipate questions?" or anticipate me? The question wasn't accusatory, but it carried an edge. A dangerous undercurrent. Adrian paused, his brow slightly furrowed, processing the unexpected remark. Both, I suppose, he answered carefully, meeting Damien's piercing eyes. I take my work seriously. The subtle tension was electric. Damien leaned back, the edges of his mouth tight. That simple honesty, delivered without fear, without subservience, it thrilled him. The more Adrian asserted himself, the stronger Damien's obsession became. He wanted Adrian close, constantly, to watch, to control, to possess, yet he had to maintain the professional facade. Over the next few hours, Damien found ways to keep Adrian in his line of sight, small, deliberate actions, assigning joint tasks, requesting immediate reports, even positioning himself in Adrian's workspace during meetings. Each move was carefully calculated, and Adrian noticed, though he didn't comment. Instead, he met Damien's intensity with quiet composure, neither afraid nor dismissive, which only fanned the flames of Damien's growing fixation. During a brief coffee break, Adrian stepped onto the terrace, the morning sun warming the glass facade. Damien followed silently, leaning against the railing some distance away. The city sprawled endlessly before them, but Damien's attention was solely on Adrian. You spend a lot of time thinking, Adrian remarked casually, not looking at him. Does it help you focus, or does it distract you? Damien's chest tightened. How could Adrian say that with such casual ease, as if he could see into Damien's very thoughts? Both, Damien replied, voice low. Depends on the day. Adrian turned slightly, just enough to catch Damien's gaze. There was a flicker in his eyes, curiosity, maybe even amusement. I hope your distractions are productive, sir. The statement was innocuous, almost teasing, yet Damien felt the heat rise to his cheeks, his pulse quickening. He hated that a junior executive, someone he had every right to command, could unsettle him this profoundly. As the morning light shifted, Damien realized with a mix of irritation and undeniable longing that Adrian Cross was no longer just a subordinate. He was a presence, a constant magnetic force in Damien's life. And he knew deep down that his obsession had only just begun. Adrian thought he was careful. He always planned his routes, his timing, even the cafes he visited during breaks. But Damien had a way of appearing exactly when Adrian least expected it. It started subtly. Adrian left a meeting early and noticed Damien lingering in the hallway, pretending to check emails. The brief glance that met his eyes wasn't accidental. He could feel the weight of Damien's attention. Adrian walked faster, a small smirk playing at his lips. He could sense the deliberate nature of these encounters. Waiter, at a cafe across the street, Adrian found himself at a table for one, quietly reviewing documents on his tablet. Damien appeared at the entrance, scanning casually, before his gaze locked on Adrian. Cross, Damien said smoothly, sliding into the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation. You work too much. Adrian blinked, mildly amused. And you work too little, he replied, not missing a beat. Or maybe you just supervise too well. Damien's lips curved into the faintest smirk, a rare break from his usual composed expression. Perhaps, he murmured. Or maybe I just make sure the most interesting people don't waste their time. Adrian felt a faint heat rise to his cheeks. There was danger in Damien's words, an undercurrent of intent that made the air between them almost tangible. He didn't flinch, but he noticed the subtle shift in Damien's posture, a slight lean forward, a magnetic pull that drew Adrian in without words. Over the next few days, these coincidences multiplied. Damien appeared in hallways, near elevators, even at the parking garage. Each encounter was brief, controlled, and calculated. Adrian began to recognize the pattern, teasing himself with the idea that Damien was testing boundaries, learning how far he could push without breaking Adrian's composure. And Adrian, despite himself, began anticipating these moments. The subtle thrill of seeing Damien unexpectedly, the intensity in his eyes, the magnetic presence, was irresistible. It was a game neither wanted to admit they were playing, yet both were utterly engaged. One evening, after the office had emptied, Adrian found himself heading to the terrace to clear his mind. Damien was already there, leaning against the railing, the city lights reflecting in his sharp eyes. "You seem to like these quiet moments," Damien observed, voice low, alone, thinking, plotting. Adrian tilted his head, the corner of his lips curling in amusement. "And you? Are you here to supervise me, or just to watch?" Damien's lips tightened, a flicker of something dangerous in his gaze. "Both," he said simply. "You have a way of distracting me, Cross. I don't like it, but I can't stop." Adrian felt a thrill run through him. That admission, quiet, controlled, yet undeniably intense, was the first crack in Damien's composed exterior. He realized with a mix of caution and intrigue that Damien's obsession was no longer subtle. It was manifest, and it was consuming him. Yet Adrian remained careful, walking the fine line between intrigue and caution. He wasn't naive. He knew the dangers of someone like Damien, someone who didn't know the meaning of restraint when desire took hold. And as he watched Damien's gaze linger on him longer than necessary, Adrian understood one undeniable truth. This obsession was mutual, whether Damien admitted it or not. The office was eerily silent. Most employees had long gone, leaving only the hum of computers and the faint glow of city lights through the glass walls. Adrian had stayed late to finish revisions on the Veil project, unaware that Damien had intentionally extended the day. "Cross." Damien's voice broke the quiet, low and controlled, yet carrying an edge that made Adrian pause mid-typing. "The meeting tomorrow depends on these numbers. You'll need my input." Adrian looked up, meeting Damien's sharp gaze. "I'm almost done, sir. You don't need to stay." "I want to," Damien said simply, his eyes scanning every detail of Adrian's movements, the subtle tension in his posture, the faint curve of his lips as he concentrated. "I need to ensure nothing is overlooked." The words were professional on the surface, but the weight behind them was anything but. Adrian noticed the subtle change in Damien's demeanor, the way his jaw tightened, the way he unconsciously leaned slightly closer, as if drawn magnetically toward Adrian. Hours passed. The room felt smaller with each passing minute. Adrian adjusted his chair, stretching briefly, and Damien's eyes followed, sharp and predatory. Every movement Adrian made seemed amplified, every subtle breath recorded in Damien's mind. At one point, Adrian reached for a pen, brushing Damien's hand by accident. Both froze. The contact was fleeting, yet the current it sent through both men was undeniable. Damien's pulse quickened, his control warring with desire. He had to restrain himself or risk everything. "Careful," Damien murmured, voice low. "Some accidents can be dangerous." Adrian raised an eyebrow, unfazed, almost teasing. "I can handle dangerous." Damien's chest tightened. That defiance, that calm in the face of his intensity, was maddening. He wanted to reach out, to claim, to test the boundaries, yet he knew any misstep could push Adrian away. Instead, he forced himself to stay composed, watching, analyzing, obsessed. Hours later, when the reports were finally complete, Adrian leaned back in his chair, exhausted but satisfied. Damien remained standing nearby, his sharp gaze never leaving Adrian's form. The silence between them was thick, charged, almost suffocating. "Go home," Damien said finally, voice low, dangerous, yet threaded with restraint, "before you start imagining things, or before I lose control." Adrian smirked faintly, standing. "I'm not sure which is more dangerous, you or this office." Damien's jaw tightened, the faint teasing, the calm challenge, the unspoken invitation in Adrian's tone. It pushed him to the edge. He wanted to step closer, to touch, to assert, yet he held back, swallowing the sharp words threatening to escape. Adrian left, but the air between them remained charged, lingering like smoke. Damien stayed in the office long after the lights were turned off, replaying every interaction, every glance, every fleeting touch. He realized then that his obsession had reached a new height. He no longer simply wanted Adrian close. He needed him. And Adrian, unknowingly, had crossed the threshold into a world where desire, obsession, and control mingled dangerously, one neither could resist. The office was empty, except for the faint hum of computers left on standby. Damien had asked Adrian to stay late again, not for work, he told himself, but because he couldn't bear the idea of Adrian leaving. The city lights outside cast long shadows across the glass walls, creating a cocoon of isolation. "Cross," Damien said, his voice low, almost rough. Do you know what you do to me? Adrian paused, mid-step, looking up from his papers. His calm gaze met Damien's, unflinching yet curious. I don't think I do, sir. Damien's chest tightened. The words were literal, yet painfully untrue. Adrian knew exactly the effect he had, or perhaps he felt it instinctively. Damien stepped closer, the air between them charged, almost suffocating. You consume my thoughts, Damien admitted, voice dropping to a whisper. I shouldn't want you cross. You're too young, too reckless in ways I can't control. And yet I can't stop thinking about you. Adrian blinked, caught off guard by the raw honesty. There was no pretense here, no masks, no games. Damien's confession was like a storm, sudden and overwhelming. You mean you're obsessed? Adrian said softly, almost teasing, but his heart thudded in his chest. Damien's eyes darkened, the edge in them sharp as a blade. Obsessed doesn't even begin to cover it. I watch, I notice, He stopped, swallowing the words that would reveal everything. He didn't want to frighten Adrian away, but he couldn't deny the truth. I want you. I need you. And I don't care if it's wrong. Adrian remained calm, though the warmth creeping into his cheeks betrayed the effect Damien's words had. He took a tentative step closer, closing the distance by mere inches, yet it felt like a chasm. Damien, Adrian said quietly, voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. You're dangerous, I can see it in you. But I don't think I'm afraid. The admission hit Damien like a jolt of electricity. He wanted to touch Adrian, to pull him close, to assert his obsession physically, but he restrained himself. Instead, he let the tension hang between them, a delicious, dangerous weight that neither spoke of, but both felt keenly. Stay, Damien whispered finally, almost pleading. Stay with me, even for a moment. Let me just look at you, study you, understand you. Adrian tilted his head, studying Damien in return. And if I say yes? Damien's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile, a predator's satisfaction barely contained. Then, he said, voice low and deliberate, you'll realize what it means to be the center of my obsession, and I warn you, you won't escape it. Adrian's heartbeat quickened, a mixture of fear, excitement, and intrigue coursing through him. And as the city lights flickered across Damien's sharp features, Adrian understood one undeniable truth. This was a man who would consume everything to keep him close, and he, Adrian, was already captivated. The air between them was thick with unspoken promises, dangerous intent, and the first real crack in their professional barrier. It was a beginning, one neither of them could deny, and one that would set the stage for everything to come. /P. The following week, Blackwood Tower felt different to Adrian. Damien's presence lingered in ways that went beyond the professional. Every glance, every carefully chosen word, every subtle shift in Damien's posture carried an unspoken weight. Adrian had begun to notice it too, the small intrusions, the deliberate proximity, the way Damien's gaze followed him, almost like a predator tracking its prey. It was dangerous, intoxicating, and impossible to ignore. Damien, meanwhile, fought a quiet war within himself. He had wanted to control everything in his life, every deal, every employee, every detail. But Adrian had slipped past his defenses. He was no longer merely observing Adrian. He wanted him close, always, consumed by the pull of obsession and desire. The day's work forced them together in the strategy room, long hours of collaborative planning stretching into the evening. Adrian noticed how Damien would lean over documents just a little too long, his shoulder brushing against Adrian's. Every accidental contact made Adrian acutely aware of the tension coiling between them. You've grown bolder, Damien remarked casually, though his sharp gaze betrayed the undercurrent of something more intense. Adrian raised an eyebrow. I could say the same about you. You've changed, or perhaps you've stopped hiding as much. Damien's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Adrian's insight unnerved him. He had always hidden his impulses, his obsessions, his need for control, but Adrian saw through it effortlessly. It was both thrilling and terrifying. A quiet pause stretched between them. Damien wanted to reach out, to close the space, to claim something he hadn't dared before. But he held back, maintaining the professional distance, even as the magnetism between them crackled, almost unbearable. Later, Adrian stepped out for a brief walk, and Damien followed, discreetly at first, though the intent was clear. When their paths crossed in the quiet corridor, Damien's hand brushed Adrian's arm. Adrian didn't flinch, didn't retreat. Instead, he turned slightly, letting the contact linger. The unspoken tension was electric. Neither had spoken, yet both knew this was no longer just a professional relationship. Desire, obsession, and dangerous curiosity mingled, creating a storm that neither could resist. "Cross," Damien murmured, voice low, just above a whisper. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" Adrian's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "I have an idea," he replied softly, his tone calm but teasing. "But perhaps you don't want to admit it." Damien's pulse quickened. Every word, every glance, every subtle movement from Adrian was a challenge, a test, a spark. And Damien realized, with both frustration and exhilaration, that he no longer wanted control in the abstract. He wanted Adrian, all of him. For the first time, Damien's obsession was not hidden. It was sharp, real, and consuming. And Adrian, calm, teasing, dangerously self-assured, was at the very center of it. The office was quiet, the low hum of the air conditioning and the faint glow of city lights filling the expansive room. Damien sat behind his desk, eyes sharp and calculating, while Adrian sorted through reports across from him. Every subtle movement Adrian made was recorded in Damien's mind, from the tilt of his head to the way his fingers brushed the papers. "You're quiet today," Damien said, voice low and deliberate, though the edge in it was unmistakable. "I'm focused," Adrian replied evenly, though his heart raced at the intensity in Damien's gaze. "You seem distracted." Damien's lips pressed into a thin line. "Distracted?" he echoed, leaning forward slightly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply paying attention to things I shouldn't, like you." Adrian's chest tightened. He had grown accustomed to Damien's subtle provocations, the way he skirted boundaries, and yet each remark, each glance, still sent a shiver down his spine. He looked up, meeting Damien's piercing eyes without flinching. "You know," Adrian said quietly, "there's a line between attention and obsession. You should be careful not to cross it." Damien's gaze darkened, sharp as a blade. "I crossed it a long time ago," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "And you've done the same. Don't pretend you haven't noticed." Adrian's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "I notice," he said softly, "and yet I'm not afraid." The words, calm yet confident, struck Damien like a physical blow. Here was a man who could match him, not in power, not in control, but in composure, in daring, in willingness to walk the razor's edge. The realization both thrilled and unnerved him. Damien leaned back in his chair, a rare display of vulnerability. "You're reckless," he murmured. "You have no idea what you're doing to me. I don't even know how to handle it." Adrian's chest rose slightly with a slow breath. "And yet, you're handling it," he replied, voice calm, teasing, but threaded with curiosity. So far, anyway. A charged silence fell between them. Damien wanted to reach out, to bridge the space, to claim what he could no longer contain, but he restrained himself. Instead, he studied Adrian, memorizing every detail. The set of his jaw, the calm fire in his eyes, the way he didn't step back despite the obvious tension. "You think you can resist me," Damien murmured, leaning forward, eyes dark. "But I've been watching you, Adrian. Every move, every glance. You're mine. And you don't even know it yet." Adrian's breath caught, and for the first time, his composed mask faltered. A shiver ran through him, not of fear, but of anticipation, curiosity, and something dangerously close to desire. "You're intense," Adrian said softly, almost a whisper, letting the words linger between them. "Intense?" Damien echoed, voice low, sharp. "I'm only just beginning." The tension hung in the room like electricity. Damien's possessiveness was no longer subtle, and Adrian's calm defiance only fanned the flames. The slow burn obsession that had simmered for weeks now threatened to ignite, pulling them closer into a dangerous magnetic orbit. And in that charged silence, Adrian realized something undeniable. He wanted it too. Wanted the obsession, the intensity, the dangerous pull that Damien embodied. For the first time, both men understood the truth. They were no longer merely colleagues. no longer merely intrigued by one another. They were caught in a web of desire, obsession, and mutual surrender, and neither had the strength or the will to escape. The office was dim, the city lights outside casting shadows across the polished floor. Adrian had stayed late, finishing up final reports. Damien had insisted on reviewing them personally, though Adrian suspected it was merely an excuse to see him, to be near him, to feed his obsession. Adrian, Damien's voice was low, rough with something unspoken. You've been here too long. Let me take over for now. Adrian shook his head, intent on finishing, but the subtle intensity in Damien's eyes made him pause. There was an edge there, a dangerous, magnetic pull that made the hair on the back of his neck rise. Damien, I can manage, Adrian replied softly, though even he felt the warmth rising to his cheeks. Damien stepped closer, the space between them shrinking until the air was electric. No, he said firmly, you've done enough for tonight. His hand brushed lightly against Adrian's wrist, not accidental, not hesitant, intentional, a subtle claim. Adrian froze, heart hammering. He could feel the heat radiating from Damien, the magnetic intensity that drew him in, despite every rational thought screaming caution. You don't understand what you do to me, Damien murmured, leaning slightly closer, his voice low, rough with restraint. Every glance, every word, it consumes me. Adrian's lips parted slightly, caught between curiosity and something deeper, something he didn't fully comprehend yet. And what do you want? He asked quietly, daring, teasing just enough to provoke him. Damien's eyes darkened, the edge in his gaze sharp and dangerous. I want you entirely, but I won't frighten you, not yet. He reached out again, this time letting his fingers brush the side of Adrian's face, a touch light as a feather, but electric in its intensity. Adrian's breath hitched, but he did not pull away. You're reckless, Damien whispered, voice rough. You don't even realize what you're doing, what effect you have on me. I think I do, Adrian replied softly, his lips curving in a faint, daring smile. And I'm not afraid. That admission seemed to shatter the last fragment of Damien's restraint. He stepped closer, the heat between them undeniable. Their faces were inches apart now, the proximity sending shivers of anticipation through both men. Every second stretched, every unspoken word hung heavy in the air. Damien's hand moved, lightly tracing down Adrian's arm, lingering on the warmth of his skin. Adrian's pulse quickened, a mixture of desire, fear, and curiosity coursing through him. You're mine, Damien whispered, barely audible, yet the words carried ownership, obsession, and promise all at once. Adrian's lips parted, but he said nothing, letting the tension thrum between them. He realized, in that suspended moment, that the pull he felt toward Damien was mutual, dangerous, consuming, irresistible. The office had become a cage, but a cage they both wanted. Neither moved away, and neither needed to. The slow burn of desire, obsession, and tension had reached its first unspoken crossing. And as the night deepened around them, Damien understood one undeniable truth. He would never let Adrian go. And Adrian didn't want him to. The office was quiet, the city lights outside spilling golden hues across polished floors. Damien and Adrian had stayed late, long past official hours, but neither had noticed time passing. Every word, every glance, every small movement had drawn them closer, the tension between them sharp and intoxicating. Damien stood close now, the air thick with anticipation. He wanted to speak, to confess the depth of his obsession, but words seemed inadequate. Instead, he let his gaze linger, studying Adrian as though memorizing every detail, the curve of his jaw, the strength in his stance, the fire quietly simmering in his eyes. You're impossible, Damien muttered finally, voice low, rough with emotion. Every day, every moment, you defy me, yet you draw me in deeper. I don't know how to fight it anymore. Adrian's lips curved in a faint smile, but his eyes were serious. And yet, you haven't run, he said softly. You haven't walked away. No, Damien admitted, taking a careful step closer. Because I can't. I won't. You've become everything. My obsession, my distraction, He stopped, swallowing hard. My need. Adrian's breath caught. The admission, raw and unfiltered, struck him with both fear and exhilaration. He had seen glimpses of Damien's obsession before, but this was undeniable, all-consuming, and he realized, with a thrill he couldn't suppress, that he wanted it too. "You're reckless," Adrian whispered, stepping closer. "You know what you're risking, what this is doing to us." Damien's lips tightened. "I know," he said, voice barely audible. "And I don't care. You're mine, Adrian, in every way that matters. And I'll fight anyone or anything that tries to take you from me." Adrian's chest rose and fell rapidly, heart pounding. He had anticipated this intensity, this obsession, but feeling it so close, so tangible, left him dizzy with desire. "And what if I want the same?" A flicker of shock crossed Damien's face before it was replaced by something darker, sharper, more possessive. "Then you'll realize what it means to surrender completely. And I warn you, Adrian, once you do, there's no turning back." The space between them contracted until mere inches separated their bodies. Every breath, every heartbeat, every subtle movement amplified the tension. Damien's hand brushed against Adrian's arm, a light touch, yet loaded with intent. Adrian didn't flinch. He leaned ever so slightly into the contact. For a long, suspended moment, they simply stared at one another, the office around them fading into insignificance. Two forces, obsession and desire, control and surrender, had collided, leaving them teetering on the edge of something irresistible, dangerous, and inevitable. Damien's restraint finally shattered in a whisper, almost a growl. "You're mine, Adrian, and I will make sure you know it, completely." Adrian's lips parted slightly, a shiver of anticipation running through him. He didn't resist. He didn't need to. He was caught, willingly, in the gravity of Damien's obsession. And as the city lights flickered across their entwined shadows, one truth became undeniable. Their bond, once professional, was now irrevocably, dangerously personal. The slow burn had reached its peak, and the next chapter, Part 4, would push them beyond desire into the realm of emotional, sensual, and possessive surrender, culminating in a dramatic, unforgettable conclusion. The office was empty, bathed in the soft glow of city lights that reflected off the glass walls. The night had stretched long, and the air between Damien and Adrian had become electric, taut with anticipation and unspoken desire. Adrian was standing by the window, arms crossed, watching the cityscape, pretending to be composed. Damien, however, had no intention of pretending. He crossed the room in long, silent strides, each movement purposeful, predatory, and magnetic. "Adrian," he murmured, voice low, rough, almost dangerous. "Do you know what it does to me, seeing you like this?" Adrian didn't flinch. He met Damien's gaze steadily, pulse quickened, lips parting slightly. "What exactly?" Damien's jaw tightened. Every ounce of control he had worked so hard to maintain was slipping. "Every glance, every movement. You ignite something I can't contain, something I shouldn't want, yet I do. I want you, all of you." The words, raw and possessive, sent a shiver down Adrian's spine. He felt the pull of Damien's obsession, the magnetic, consuming force that had been building for weeks. And instead of fear, there was anticipation, curiosity, a thrilling surrender to the danger he felt radiating from the man before him. Without another word, Damien closed the distance, his hand brushing lightly against Adrian's cheek, a feathered touch, yet charged with intent. Adrian leaned into the contact, almost imperceptibly, testing the boundaries, daring Damien to take the next step. "You're reckless," Damien growled, voice low, rough with need. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this is? How dangerous you are to me?" "I think I do," Adrian whispered, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. "And yet, I'm not afraid." That was all Damien needed. In a fluid motion, he closed the final space between them, his lips brushing Adrian's in a light, exploratory kiss. Adrian's breath hitched, his body responding before his mind could protest. It was slow, deliberate, a dance of control and surrender, testing the waters of passion that had long simmered between them. Damien's hands traced lightly down Adrian's arms, lingering at the shoulders, as if memorizing every contour, every detail. Adrian didn't resist. He wanted to see how far this would go, wanted to feel the intensity, the obsession, the possessiveness that Damien had promised. The kiss deepened, electric and consuming, a tangible acknowledgement of desire and the first real step into full surrender. Damien's lips and hands moved with intent, claiming, marking, but always careful to read Adrian's responses. Every gasp, every shiver, every subtle movement of compliance or resistance guiding him. "You're mine," Damien whispered against Adrian's lips, the words like a growl of possession. "Completely, and I won't let go." Adrian's pulse raced. He had wanted this, wanted the obsession, the intensity, the dangerous pull, and now feeling it, experiencing it firsthand, he realized he didn't want to run. He wanted to surrender to Damien, fully, despite the danger, despite the consequences. The city lights flickered across their entwined forms, and in that stolen moment, Damien and Adrian stepped fully into a bond that was no longer professional, no longer restrained. It was personal, intimate, and irrevocable. The night had only just begun. The office was quiet, suffused with the dim glow of city lights. Papers lay scattered across the table, forgotten. Adrian's breath still trembled from the intensity of their first kiss, and Damien's eyes burned with unrestrained desire. The air between them was thick, charged with obsession, and something far more intimate, possession. "You don't understand," Damien murmured, his voice low, rough. "I've never wanted anyone like this, like you. Not just close, not just near. I want to consume you, to make you mine in every possible way." Adrian's chest rose and fell rapidly, his pulse matching the rhythm of Damien's words. "And I think I want that," he admitted softly, letting the confession escape. "Even if it's dangerous, even if it's overwhelming." Damien's lips curved into a predatory smile. "Overwhelming is the point," he said, moving closer until the space between them disappeared. His hands framed Adrian's face again, this time pressing gently, deliberately, demanding attention, claiming intimacy. Adrian leaned into Damien's touch, heart hammering, body responding to the heat and intensity radiating from him. He had been cautious, calculated, always aware of boundaries, but Damien's obsession shattered them effortlessly. And he found, with a thrill he couldn't deny, that he wanted to be shattered. "You're mine," Damien whispered, voice rough with need, "and I will show you what it means to belong entirely." The words were like fire, igniting every nerve in Adrian's body. He let himself surrender fully, giving into the magnetic pull, the dangerous intimacy, the possessive obsession that had been simmering for weeks. Every touch, every brush of skin, every whispered word deepened the connection, a bond that was both emotional and sensual, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. Damien's hands traced the lines of Adrian's jaw, down his neck, lingering at the shoulders, memorizing, marking, claiming. Adrian's breath hitched, a soft moan escaping as he pressed closer, feeling the raw intensity of Damien's desire. "I've waited for this," Damien admitted, voice low, rough, almost a growl. "Every glance, every moment, every day, I've wanted you like this, completely. And now you're here, with me, and I'll never let you go." Adrian tilted his head, lips brushing Damien's in a soft, teasing smile despite the heat coursing through him. "I don't want you to," he whispered, letting the words linger, heavy with intent. The confession, the surrender, was mutual. Two forces, obsession and desire, possession and surrender, collided, intertwining their hearts, bodies, and souls. It was more than intimacy. It was a declaration, a promise, a binding force that neither could resist. The city around them faded. The office, the world, the constraints, they all ceased to exist. There was only Damien, only Adrian, only the magnetism that had pulled them together and would not let go. And in that suspended, fiery moment, both understood one undeniable truth. Their connection was no longer fleeting, no longer restrained. It was permanent, consuming, and impossible to deny. The night had deepened, and the city outside seemed to disappear behind the glass walls of the office. The glow of the city lights played across Damien and Adrian, illuminating the sharp angles of Damien's face and the soft curves of Adrian's expression. Both were caught in a current of desire, possession, and surrender, a storm neither could resist. Damien's hands were no longer tentative. They roamed with purpose, memorizing, claiming, asserting the obsession he had nurtured for weeks. Adrian's body responded instinctively, every nerve alight with anticipation, every breath catching as Damien's lips traced the line of his jaw, down his neck, lingering at the pulse point just below. "You're mine," Damien whispered, voice rough, filled with need. "Completely. Every part of you. Every thought. Every heartbeat." Adrian leaned into him, breathless, pulse racing. I'm yours," he admitted, voice soft, yet steady. The surrender was full, conscious, and intoxicating. "All of me." Damien's lips curved into a possessive smile. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear you say that." He pressed a heated kiss to Adrian's temple, lingering, marking, claiming. Every touch, every movement was a statement, a declaration that nothing could come between them now. Not control, not fear, not the world outside. Pause. As they moved together, the heat between them escalated. Damien's hands roamed lower, exploring, guiding, asserting his dominance, while respecting Adrian's boundaries, testing, learning, claiming. Adrian responded in kind, leaning into every touch, every brush of lips, every whispered word. It was slow, deliberate, and intensely consuming, a dance of obsession and surrender that neither could resist. "I've never felt like this before," Adrian whispered, shivering against Damien's chest. "So consumed, so alive." "That's because no one has ever dared to want you like I do," Damien murmured, voice low, almost a growl. "And now, no one will ever have you but me." Their connection deepened beyond the physical, intertwining desire and emotion. The obsession that had simmered between them for weeks became a living force, a binding flame that consumed them both, body and soul. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. Time had lost all meaning. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, their foreheads resting together, Damien's hands cradled Adrian's face, lingering with possessive reverence. "You're mine," Damien repeated softly, voice filled with awe and possessiveness. "And I'll keep you. Forever." Adrian smiled faintly, eyes shining with both exhaustion and exhilaration. "I don't want anyone else," he whispered. "I'm yours." In that moment, the office, the city, and the world outside ceased to exist. Only Damien, only Adrian, only their obsession, desire, and mutual surrender remained. And somewhere deep within Damien, a new thought took root, a promise, a future, a possibility. Adrian would carry not just his heart, but a part of himself, binding their fates together forever. The office was silent, the city lights outside casting a soft glow over Damien and Adrian. They had spent the night wrapped in each other's arms, the intensity of their passion lingering like a tangible presence. Every touch, every whispered word had solidified the bond between them, a connection neither time nor circumstance could break. Damien held Adrian close, forehead pressed to his, breathing slowly, as if trying to memorize the rhythm of his heartbeat. "You're mine," he whispered again, a vow and a command all at once, completely, always. "Pah!" Adrian's lips curved into a small, tired smile. "I know," he murmured, resting his head against Damien's chest. "And I'm yours, forever." For a long moment, silence enveloped them, comfortable and intimate. Then Adrian shifted slightly, a faint hesitation in his movement. Damien noticed immediately, eyes narrowing with concern. "What is it?" he asked, voice low, protective. Adrian's fingers trembled slightly as he placed a hand over his stomach. "I think we're going to have a child," he said softly, words barely audible. Damien froze, eyes widening for a brief moment, before a slow, possessive smile spread across his face. "A child," he repeated, almost reverently. "Our child." Adrian nodded, feeling the warmth of Damien's hand cover his own, pressing gently against the small curve of his stomach. "Yes, our future." Damien's lips pressed to Adrian's temple, lingering there, a silent vow of protection, obsession, and love. "No one will touch you, no one will harm you," he murmured, voice low and commanding. I will keep you both safe. I will make sure you are mine in every way, always. Adrian shivered, not from fear, but from the intensity of the emotion flowing from Damien. His obsession was no longer dangerous. It was protective, consuming, absolute. And he knew now that he wanted nothing else but this life with Damien, their child, and the permanence of their bond. "You're incredible," Adrian whispered, lifting his eyes to meet Damien's. "You love me like no one ever has. Like no one ever could." Damien's gaze darkened, sharp and possessive, filled with desire, obsession, and reverence. "And I will continue to, for as long as I live," he said firmly. "Because you are mine, and now so is our child. Nothing can take what belongs to me." He pulled Adrian closer, hands and lips both claiming, marking, and cherishing, a final act of possessive devotion. Adrian leaned into him fully, surrendering completely, safe in the knowledge that Damien's obsession had evolved, from desire to eternal devotion, from possession to protection. The office no longer felt like a workplace. It was their sanctuary, their world, their universe, and as Damien held Adrian, feeling the subtle life growing within him, he knew one undeniable truth. They were forever bound. Bound by desire, obsession, love, and the promise of a future together. The city outside continued to pulse and hum, oblivious to the two men who had claimed each other wholly, whose lives and hearts were now irrevocably entwined. And Possessive.